Hey, this is The View from the Legacy of You comic book series, and this is Chill on the Green Box. And today we have famed writer of the Unicorn Vampire Hunter series, Caleb Palmquist, on the show. And he's talking about his new project, Dragon Grid. This is a Western story with dragons. And he has accumulated almost 500 backers on that. So he's talking about his whole series for Kickstarter today and being a writer for 8 years with great titles post and pre-pandemic. So, y'all show. That's all you got to say. A lot of knowledge and Specks. Let's go ahead and start.
Welcome back to the hood. This is Chill on the Green Box with Specks, Thompson, and The View. And thanks for my co-host for the intro. You know, you're doing a great job. You know, you staying on topic and being on the show finally. And today we got a good guest. We got Caleb Palmquist today.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. For people who don't know who you are, give people a little brief introduction about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Caleb Palmquist. I'm a comic book writer. I've been writing comics for about 8 years. I'm best known for my series Unicorn Vampire Hunter. But right now I've got a campaign on Kickstarter called Dragon Grit, which is a fantasy Western comic.
Okay, cool. And I think I read your bio a little bit. I know you're from Washington, and
yep.
And I'm not sure up that way. Do y'all have the green electrical boxes in front of the your neighborhoods or your house?
Yeah.
Oh, did y'all hang out on them or hang out around them growing up?
I mean, I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, I definitely. I'm trying to think back to whether or not I did that, but certainly I still see people hanging out around those.
Okay. Well, this show is basically that same concept, you know, of just hanging around and around it, talking and chilling around the green box. Okay, that's something, you know, I did when I was younger. You know, some people still do it nowadays, being grown. But I decided to make my show like that because I've been on plenty of podcasts and seen podcasts or shows that creators get on and talk 2 hours about their project and nobody knows anything about them or a reason to support them. So I developed my show so people know more about the creator and have a reason why to support them.
Cool.
All right. So my show broken down in 4 different segments, all based around that same concept of the green box and comics and music. And my first segment is called Breaking It Down. And because on that green box, you broke concepts, ideas, thoughts, and whatnot with your friends. So I'm going to break your brain down so people get a better idea of who you are.
All
right. So what makes your family unique?
What makes my family unique?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I mean, my most immediate family, people I live with, my wife is a writer, and I'm also a writer. So we're writing a comic book together right now. And then I would say that I come from a pretty creative family, a pretty creative of people who like to write, but sort of all in different ways. My dad was a journalist. My younger brother is a stand-up comedian.
Wow.
And then and my older brother is sort of a PR communication specialist. So we all kind of are writers, but for very different things.
Yeah, different tangents across the board, I see.
Yeah.
That's dope. That's pretty unique, though. I mean, y'all all happen to be writers, but different type of writers, you know.
Yeah.
That's cool. My next question is, would you rather be chased by a horde of zombies or cursed mummies?
Oh man. I guess probably a mummy because it's only one thing. I feel like maybe I could outsmart it.
Okay. You don't see many mummies anymore in film. You know, it's like they kind of got rid of them.
That's true.
I know growing up, you know, we had we had like a Power Rangers S type TV show with mummies and uh, several mummy movies and Scorpion Kings and all kind of stuff, and then you know as well as the classic shows. There might have been a TV show too featuring mummies, but yeah. um, then my last question of the segment: are you you're a writer? I assume you read a lot. So, are you more into like novels, or you read more of comics since you are in comics?
I would say that I read more novels than I read comics. I
Mm-hmm.
read a decent amount of comics, but I read a lot of books, especially I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I can do that like while I'm doing whatever, like walking the dog or doing dishes or packing orders for my comics or whatever. And so, um, yeah, I think I read more books, but it's mostly listening. I think I don't read that much with my eyes anymore.
With that being said, do you feel like you retain less information by listening to it since you're not reading it anymore?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe a little bit because I'm a lot of times I'm multitasking while I'm listening, and if I'm reading a regular old fashioned book, I'm that's all I'm doing. It's like just focusing on that. So maybe I retain a little bit less,
Mm-hmm.
but uh, I think that I get through more, and I think I tend to enjoy the experience a little bit better um, when I'm listening. But uh, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
um, since when you listen to these audiobooks, um, is it mostly like the author reading a book, or it'd be some like paid voice actor you hear the most?
I think usually it's a voice actor, and
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while I listen to a book that's like read by the author, but for the most part, I think it's usually someone else, like an actor.
Okay, which one do you find more enjoyable? Or I guess pretty sure the actor would be the best, but like I guess do you appreciate the author reading them better than a voice actor?
Maybe I think uh, sometimes it's like people who are naturally like gifted readers, like there's actors or voice actors who have written a book.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, if it's the author, it's like a nonfiction book. Like if you get a book, I'm trying to think of what I like. The Jeanette McCurdy put out a book about like called "I'm Glad My Mom Died." She was like from um, that old show iCarly,
Oh, Carl,
and
yes.
yeah, and so she wrote a memoir and she read it, and I thought that was pretty good. But
Does it have any? Is that a tangent for a recent show that's on right now?
yeah, that's. I was just thinking about that. I was reading about that. I don't actually have HBO Max or whatever it's on, so I didn't watch it. Um, but that was definitely blowing my mind. All that stuff coming out.
Yeah. Um, I believe one of the castmates from that show, the black guy, I believe. Yeah, I think it's iCarly or Zoe 101. One of them. But like their mom is taking up for the guy. Yeah, saying he was a genius and stuff like that. And then if anything happened to them kids, it's like it's the parents' fault. I was like, ugh.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a weird story. I haven't watched the show myself, but it seems like a lot of folks knew it was going on,
huh.
but if you knew it was like, I guess like you the one like if you want going to one of the parties and you see the stuff going on in that room over there, you know to go the other way. But it seemed like people are like, oh, I want to see what's going on, And it seemed
Hmm.
like it's like from the social media posts that was seeing like what's going on. Like people like knew it was happening, but it was like, well, it can't be that bad type of thing. But I guess it
Right.
was. I guess it was.
Yeah.
But that's all I got for that segment. Hopefully, people got a good feel from you, who you are, and you know. And on to my next segment. It's called the back issues. And being in the comics, you know all about back issues. But for people who don't know, if you want to know about a character's origin story, you'll read their back issues. So if you want to know about, Deadpool's origin story, you go to his back issues to find more about him. So in this segment, we're going to your back issues to find out more about you.
Okay.
All right. So where are you from, and what do you call your hood?
I am from Spokane, Washington, which is technically the second largest city in Washington. That is sort of always a surprising fact to people. But it's like a lot smaller than Seattle, like way, way smaller than Seattle. But Seattle's so huge that, nothing else kind of compares to it. And so, yeah, I'm from Spokane. And growing up, a lot of people called it Spokecompton because there's like a really bad like crime and homelessness problem here in Spokane. But I like it. It's where I'm from. So you got a lot of pride from, the city that you're from, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a big defender. There's a hashtag online that's hashtag Spokane doesn't suck. So, I mean, that kind of tells you what you need to know, which is that it's not that great, but people who live here and love it are very strong defenders of it.
Okay. You ever heard of Phoenix Jones?
Oh, he was the superhero, right? In Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he ever do any work down there?
I don't think so. It's like, we're on the other side of the state. So
okay.
Unfortunately, we didn't have him watching our streets.
All right. Yeah, I've been trying to reach out to him to get an interview from him. I thought it'd be pretty cool, but it sounded like he really like. I mean, I haven't seen documentaries and stuff, but it seemed like he's like really a Bruce Wayne type of dude, like real hard to get a hold of, and only time you seen him when stuff going on, like last video I seen he posted like somebody's car got stolen. He chased down the car and found the car that got stolen. I was like, what? Too much time. Like I can't imagine searching Seattle for a stolen car and then having to find that stolen car, and like how big the city is. Like that's a lot of footwork. Or he could have a motorcycle. He's a superhero, so you could be driving a motorcycle around.
That's true.
But with that being said, do you are you a music lover?
Yeah, I mean, I like music as much as the next guy. I wouldn't say that I'm like I wouldn't say I'm super knowledgeable, and also I'm completely tone deaf. I mean, I can't sing to save my life. But I definitely enjoy music for sure.
What artist or song got you liking a certain genre or music in general?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm kind of all over the place, but something that sort of a weird thing that I fell into when I was in college. I went to college in like a real small town. It is right on the border between Washington and Idaho. And because back in like the 70s and 80s, the drinking age was lower in Idaho, what that meant is the town just across the border had like way better bars and everything, right?
Well, that's funny because I spent some time in Idaho, but it's still like a dry state though.
Well,
because like everything seemed like it closed at 10 o'clock.
Well, in this particular in Moscow, Idaho, they got like, I mean, it's not crazy, but it's they got quite a few good bars right there on Main Street, and so I used to go over there, and a lot of the live music that was playing. I mean, it's Idaho, right? So
yeah,
so there's like a bunch of bluegrass bands that would play, and it was the weirdest thing because when I was growing up, I was always like, I hated country. I didn't want to listen to country music at all, and I don't know that bluegrass is really country, but like But I started to get really into bluegrass music, and so I would say every once in a while that's kind of my like happy place music, right? If I'm like if I'm feeling nostalgic, I listen to some bluegrass.
Okay. That's cool. But yeah, I was in Idaho and Twin Falls, no, Idaho Falls, Twin Falls. It was another one that's close by there. I was there for like 6 months, so got my little share of the Idaho fun. Yeah. All right. Comic books. What comic book or comic related TV show got you into comics?
Oh, sure. So when I was a kid, it was definitely X-Men and Spider-Man. I was like the things that I really loved. And then as I got a little bit older, the first comic that I read that really made me think I could write comics was Brian K. Vaughan's The Last Man. You know that comic?
I've seen it, but I haven't read that one though.
Yeah, it's like about this virus that suddenly spreads around the world and kills every man except for this one dude and his monkey. He's like this dude and his monkey, and they're the only things with a Y chromosome left on the planet. And so then it's like this world ruled by women, and he's trying to like figure out that everyone wants this guy because he's like sort of humanity's last hope, right? So it's like this post-apocalyptic crazy thing. It's really good. Anyway, I read that and I was like, oh man, I could do this. I could write comics, you know. So.
All right. Hey, you watched the new show? You say you watched X-Men. Did you get a chance to watch X-Men 97 yet?
I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list. I'm gonna see if I can convince my wife to watch it with me this weekend because she's not like a big superhero person, but I'm gonna see if she'll watch it with me.
Yeah,
but I'm excited, especially because I heard the Cyclops is like really awesome in the show.
Yeah, I watched it. I know I don't really have time to catch shows like that, but I ended up watching it in the car right along, picking up my daughter because I'm a big X-Men fan. Just ironically the shirt,
Yeah, there you go.
But ironically, yes, they definitely gave Cyclops redemption in there, Storm redemption. Like their characters. It was good, back in the day when we watched it. But if you ever read some X-Men books, they're vastly different from the shows. But I don't know about Jean Grey. They haven't gave her that much screen time, so I don't know if she fainted yet. Because I know every episode she used to faint. So, but yes, definitely, Cyclops is more comic book accurate, in the show. He definitely just not just help this guy with shoot laser beams. Like he did some awesome stuff. The funny part about I don't remember him being that much of a central character in the show. It felt like it was more centered around like Logan and Jubilee more, but like it seemed like he's more like a front runner of this show.
That's cool. Cyclops has always been one of my favorite characters, so I'm glad that they're doing him, like giving him more attention and making him cooler.
Yeah, because the movies did not do him justice at all.
No.
So growing up with a family of writers, and being in the comics, whatever. So, what age did you find out that you was a nerd?
Oh, very early. So, one thing about my family too is that they're all very into sports. So, growing up, my dad was specifically a sports journalist. So he was always going, getting free tickets to football games and whatever, and so we would go to a lot of that stuff, and I hated it. I never liked it at all. And now I'm more into playing sports. I wouldn't say I'm big into watching sports at all, but I definitely like play, like in some like intramural leagues and stuff like that. But when my brothers and other kids and stuff were trying to play football or whatever, I just like wanted to play computer games. We had Commander Keen on the computer, and so I was like, that's what I wanted to do.
That's funny. It's always that one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's dope, man. Um, um, Sports run. So when he wrote, he watched the shows, or he went out to do the writing. How did that work out?
I mean, if you're a sports reporter, then you're going to games and you're reporting on them, um, and then I mean, it's just like reporting on anything else, I guess.
So
You're just
was he just local, or he did like the professional games?
I mean, so the newspaper he worked for was covered all of the eastern half of Washington, so it'd be like college and
Oh,
and then
okay.
they'd also cover like college games, high school games, and then other stuff like that. And like the Gonzaga is in Spokane, and that's like one of the biggest college basketball teams, right? So um, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, if you was into the sports, you definitely been all over that.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I mean I almost think I was when I was a kid because my whole family was so focused on sports. I was like almost like just rebellious and was like, I
Hmm.
don't want to do what you guys are into.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
What I saying in that segment, going to my next, is called the hotkeys. It's a double meaning term. Being in comics, you should know about like hotkeys, like key issues where a new writer, a new artist get on a project, or a new character introduced, or nowadays when a storyline gets picked up by a company for a show or movie nowadays. Also in music, there are keys on a keyboard or turntable that a producer or DJ will press to get the event live turned up. So this part of the show is for everybody, turned up about what you do and highlight everything you do, so they know um, everything about you and your works. So, with that being said, I want to go into your book. You brought up Unicorn Vampire. So that intrigued me. So what is that?
Sure. Unicorn Vampire Hunter was the first book that I think really got me some attention and kind of got people noticing my work. And what it is about a unicorn who hunts vampires with his horn.
Yeah.
So it's a fantasy adventure comic. And yeah, I mean, the story is about a prince who gets cursed to live as a unicorn, and then sort of defends this dark forest from vampires. Um, I think one of the things about that series that people don't expect, the art is like very like Disney, almost cartoonish, but it's got like really intense emotional themes. Like it's people come out of it being like, man, that was not what I was expecting. You like really punched me in the face with like some of this emotional some of these emotional scenes and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, but yeah, the short pitch is unicorn stabs vampires through the heart with his horn. So if that's yeah, that's what the book's about.
So, that one of your first books you read within your 8 years, or it's the first one that
Um,
people gravitate to?
It was the second book that I started. The first one was a sci-fi thing that was never very popular. And I was still kind of learning how to write comics. And so if you search online, you can still find it, but it's out of print. And um, it was, I was kind of languishing in obscurity, trying to figure out how to get to really hit my stride. And then Unicorn Vampire Hunter was the first thing I made that I think was where I really figured out how to tell a story in comics. So yeah.
Um, so when you say 8 years of writing, Like, you mean 8 years of being a comic book writer or writer in general?
Oh, comic books, yeah. I've been writing. I mean, nothing that's published, but I
Hmm.
mean, I've been writing since I was a kid, right? I've got there's uh, so much that I've written that will never be published or is forgotten about or whatever. The first like major big thing I wrote actually was a fan fiction for Stargate. So back in when I was in college, a friend of mine and I, we wrote like basically a novel. It was like 90,000 words of Stargate fan fiction.
You're
Um,
dedicated.
yeah. It was a lot, and we really had fun with that. I think about that all the time because I've never written something that long since, like in terms of word count, but because comics don't have that many words, script
Yeah.
like so. Um, but yeah, so I've been writing for a really long time, ever since I was a kid. Yeah.
Okay. What I was gonna say. So, is that Unicorn Vampire Hunter? Is that ongoing or it stopped?
Oh, it's still ongoing. Yeah. In fact, Daryl Toe, who's the artist, is uh, currently coloring. He's on the coloring stage of issue number 7. Um, and so we did a Kickstarter late last year for issues 6 and 7, and then it's still ongoing. My current plan for that series, I have it plotted out to I think like 17 issues. Um, so and it always does really well. So I think we'll continue to do that one for sure.
Cool, cool. What makes okay? So the first one you did, soon you said out of print, so that means you stopped doing that. So, uh, and I'm pretty sure you have other books besides the
Hmm.
three. So, what makes or what point do you pick like, okay, this book ain't doing well, so I stopped. I want to end it here, or this book's doing great. Let me keep going with it. Like, when do you see that turning point?
I mean, it really is just depends on how well it sells and how well people respond to it. Sometimes there's things that I really want to do that I do even if they're not getting that great of a reception, but I have to, I mean, this is what I do, and so I have to make sure that it makes enough money to justify it. I mean, I don't have, like it's got to make at least enough money to pay for itself, right?
Hmm.
And that wasn't always true. When I first started out, I basically saved up a lot of money, or I should say I saved up some money, and then I took out a bunch of credit card debt
Oh,
to try to make some of those early comics. And but now at this point, it's like, uh, you know, if I usually try my best to understand what's going to work and what's not, and I try to only bring projects to Kickstarter that I think are going to be well received. But that's not always true. I had a campaign earlier this year, a new comic that I thought was going to be an ongoing series, and just really flopped. People
mm,
weren't interested in it, and so I ended up canceling the Kickstarter and not continuing with that project at all. Um, I might revisit it someday, but unfortunately, it's not. I like to believe that the things that do well for me are things that I'm very passionate about and that I like, and that the stories I want to tell. But there is an element of uh, like economics, like money. I have to be able to make enough money to keep doing them. Because if you were to add up like all the comics I've ever done, how much money they cost to make, like to pay artists and to pay letterers and to print them and everything else, I mean, it would be astronomical. It's like it's a lot of money, and I'm only able to do it because people really support me and people get excited about the books that I'm putting out. So to answer your question, like the short answer is, um, if something is not making enough money to support itself, then I kind of have to end it. But I usually try to end it in a way where it's like a complete story, You know,
Okay.
I don't like to end things like if it's like not finished. That first series that I did never got finished, but ever since then, whenever I'm going to end something, I I make sure the story gets wrapped up. And I usually have plans going into stuff where like Unicorn Vampire Hunter had a 5-issue plan, and then I had a 10-issue plan and like a 20-issue plan. And so each of those could have ended it, and been the end, and been satisfying, because I don't want to leave anyone hanging. Um, you know, it's never fun to read a book series or a comic series and be like, oh, it's a cliffhanger, and they're never going to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only have like 2 series out myself. And one of the series, I say it's my flagship series, and it's doing pretty well, I'll say. And my other series, I kind of know how to market it because it's a manga versus American comic, and I know how people consume manga, so I gotta get like maybe like 3 more chapters so I can do a full volume. How they buy it, but like with that, people are saying, "Ooh, good idea! Ooh, I like it. Yes, ooh, this and third," but nobody's really buying it.
Yeah, that's actually something that I learned the hard way, is that people can, if you ask people, do you think this is a good idea? Do you like this concept? A lot of times people are going to be like, yeah, that's awesome, and then not turn around and support you with their dollars. And that doesn't mean that they don't believe in you or they don't like what you're doing, but when people like something, they like something, and they show that by buying it. And so, I think sometimes, the best test is just put it out there and see if people are gonna, you also got to make sure you're in the right market. You're advertising correctly and stuff. I think that's what's so great about Kickstarter. I don't think if I only was selling books through my web store, like on my website, I mean, I'd probably sell some, but I wouldn't sell anywhere near the number that I sell on Kickstarter. It's just such a good platform for that.
Do you do any conventions?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I used to do a lot before the pandemic. I did, like in 2019, I think I did like 12 or something. And I was like flying for them, and I got really burnt out on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I did too many.
Okay, I'm doing I only started 2019, so I got caught kind of in the pandemic. So I'm doing my first convention runs now, and I'm trying to do one every month because I don't know this.
Well, it's a great, if you are like an extrovert, if you're good at talking to people and selling your, pitching your concept, then I mean, conventions can be great. I would say for me, I like to do, now I'm trying to do like 3 a year, and I just carefully pick which ones I do. And that's just because for me, I can get exhausted on like trying to pitch to people and be around that many people for so long. Can be exhausting. But I applied for New York and Portland this year. I haven't heard back, but if they accept me, I'll go to both of those for sure. Okay. And I've done the one in Seattle and the one in Portland before, and then I've done Heroes Con in Charlotte, and I've done MegaCon, which is in Florida.
Yeah, I'm waiting to hear back from. I'm on the East Coast. I'm waiting to hear back from Heroes Con myself. Charlotte, I think like maybe 3 or 4 hours away from me. So.
Okay, Heroes Con is great. Yeah, if you get in, I would definitely recommend it. That's one of the most fun I've ever had at a con. I did that one in 2019, and I would say the best part about that is there's so many creators that go there. Like, I made a ton of friends at that convention that I still talk to today, just like other people who make comics and stuff. So, yeah, that's a super fun one to do.
So, like, I never went to conventions growing up. And I mean, I had a teacher who would tell me about an anime convention in Atlanta, Um, Thinking about it now, it might have been MomoCon she was talking about, or Dragon Con. I don't know, but pretty sure it was MomoCon, and that was like 2004, 2005, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So no telling what it really was. But I never went. I really didn't go to my first convention until last year. So, and that was because A, the pandemic, and B, because I never went.
Yeah.
So I was going because I was too scared to do a booth myself. So I was like, well, let me go to conventions and peek the scene out and see what I need and whatever. And what I realized is people sell a lot of printed out anime stuff and sell it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But people, some of these conventions are more for celebrities. So like, yeah, it's a big thing. Yeah, it was cool and all that, but the people are going to go see the voice actor who was for the Stormtrooper and the third Star Wars movie.
Right.
People is going for that, and the creators are there, and barely not even creators. Like I done seen it'd be like, oh, this guy's a Marvel artist here, and I'm like, oh, that's dope. But like he got two people at his booth, and you'll think the comic convention you see more people going to those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, trying to figure out which cons are the celebrity ones and which ones are the ones for your actual comic book people.
It's true. There are definitely some that are better for that than others.
Yeah.
So it just kind of depends on the convention and how they run it and everything. And sometimes the really big ones can still be good for comic creators. It kind of depends on how much spotlight the convention puts on that. And so I would say, like, for that reason, Heroes Con is a great one for indie comic creators because it's all about comics, you know?
Okay. I had a funny thing happen at a convention I went to 2 weeks ago. It was a small one. I don't know if you heard about Florence, South Carolina, but it was in Florence, South Carolina, the smaller town, Carolina. And I guess my presentation was real good, my setup. And I wasn't getting sales because they assumed that I was a company selling books. So I had to start pitching like, oh, this is independently owned. This is local created. I create this, and I started getting sales that way because they thought I was like some company like Image or Boom Comics, selling books there. They thought I was some major company. I was like, man, that's crazy. Like, I'm just a regular person with 4-5 books on my table, and they think my printer is so good, they don't want to spend because they think I'm a corporation.
I see.
I thought that was pretty funny. I'm like, well, at least my stuff looked good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe I gotta check the numbers. I believe your Kickstarter you got right now, you probably had the most backers from somebody on my show. I gotta check numbers though. I'm not quite sure, but you might be the one that most.
That's cool.
So 2 questions with that. Well, 3 questions. What number Kickstarter is this for you?
I think if you include some that I've done in collaboration with other people and on another account, I think this is the 25th Kickstarter that I've done.
Oh, okay. So, are you seeing a lot of return backers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would say for this one, because I can check, but for this one, because it's a brand new series, I have a pretty high number of new backers, but I have a lot of returning backers. So I would say it looks like it's about 75% returning backers right now and 25% new backers as of today.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I got a lot of questions apparently, but I see Kickstarter. It feels like they cap out people around the 500 mark. Do you see that?
They
Like,
what now?
Cap off like creators, like indie creators at like a 500 mark. Like I see a lot of Kickstarters that are popular, like just like I guess with no affiliation with a main publisher. It seems like they're always around a 500 backer mark. Like
I would say that 500 is where a lot of people end up sitting at. Yeah, I would, but there are some creators who are hitting bigger numbers than that. There are some creators who are getting around 1,000 backers or more than that per campaign. I would say that's like the top like 2% of creators on comic creators on Kickstarter. I don't think that anything's being like artificially capped. I think it's more just kind of, if you think about how many backers there are that exist, like how many people are using Kickstarter actively to get comics. Like if I can look at how many total people have ever backed something of mine, and it ends up being somewhere around like 2,500 people, who like, that's like unique people who have ever backed any project of mine. And then I've compared numbers with some even more successful creators, and it's like 4,500 or 5,000 people, and that's over like 8-10 years of doing campaigns. So how many of those people are still active? A friend of mine who like on his best campaigns gets around 1,000 backers per campaign. He's got like 5,000 people have ever backed him. So, and usually it's like, maybe around a quarter or a third of those backers are new. And so you think like, it's not, you get a lot of people who back once and never come back, or whatever. I guess what I'm trying to say is the pool of people using Kickstarter for comics is ultimately not that big. We're probably talking about, if I were to guess myself, less than 10,000 people who are like actively on Kickstarter looking for comics to back. Like probably significantly less than that, who are active in any given year. And so if you think about that, and then think about how many projects there are, like at any given time, there's like 300 live comic book projects on Kickstarter. And so, if you think about your habits as a consumer, like how many different books are you going to get? Like if you're getting comics at the comic book shop, for example, like just like Marvel and DC or Image Comics or whatever, like how many books are on the average person's pull list, right? Like, I guess it depends on the person and how much money they have to spend. But for me, usually I have like 1 or 2 titles on my pull list. Like I still go to the shop because I have my local shop I like to support, but I don't buy that many comics anymore. And even when I was buying a lot more, it'd be like maybe 10 books a month. And so, and then you think about Kickstarter, like some people are big Kickstarter users who back projects every month, but how many, they're not going to back all 300 that are active at any given time. So then you take that, like, less than 10,000 people, and you spread it out across 300 projects at any given time. Even if a lot of those projects are really good, those people aren't all going to back all of them. And so I think when you see that 500 number, that's like a good observation. And I think that's just kind of how, if you think about how many backers there are to go around, that's kind of a good success mark, is like if you're hitting that 500, and then it's really only the people who are the top tier creators who are making stuff that a lot of people want that are getting above that. And so, yeah, I think the limitation is just how many people there are supporting these projects.
Okay. Speaking of projects on Kickstarter, your new project, Dragon Grit, what is that about?
I'm glad you asked. It is a fantasy Western. So it's about a world. It's like a Western world where instead of riding horses, people ride dragons. So the main character is an ex-outlaw named Vera, and her dragon Blaze, who's a fire dragon. And they are trying to make a living on the straight and narrow. And so they end up taking this escort job to basically escort essentially like a city slicker, like a kid from out east who just inherited his father's estate, and he's got this dying dragon who keeps trying to wander off. And he hires her to figure out what's wrong with this dragon, and it turns out that she's trying to go to her ancestral dragon graveyard. But she can't fly anymore, this old dragon, so they have to go across the desert on foot. And she's escorting them, but all the while they're being pursued by an old rival of hers, this guy named Jack, who runs a gang, a dangerous cowboy gang, and they're being pursued by them. And so it's like a travelogue Western story, like 3:10 to Yuma or True Grit.
Okay.
But, you know, there's dragons.
All right. Hence the name Dragon Grit, right?
Yeah.
Where does the term grit come from? Do you know?
Well, you know, grit is like almost like do you have what it takes? Like, are you tough enough to handle, you know, the West and like handle life on the frontier? And so it's like true grit. It's like, you know, true toughness. And then of course our title is just kind of a play on that.
Okay. That's cool. How'd you come up with the concept of this project?
Well, I actually wrote this with my wife, who her name is Lorelei Jonason, and she's a novelist. So we wanted to write something together. She loves dragons and fantasy stories, and I love Westerns. And so we decided to kind of just mash those up together. I've always wanted to tell a Western story, and I was like, well, you know, I write a lot of fantasy comics, and she writes a lot of fantasy stuff. And so I was like, how can I tell a Western, but in a way that's not just another Western? You know, it's not just your run-of-the-mill Western. It's got to be something interesting and different. And so we decided to make it a fantasy book and put dragons into it.
Okay. I'm not sure if you did mention it or not, but is this a fantasy world or is it a actual place?
So it's a fantasy world. It's like, it is a Western in the sense that it's kind of based on Westerns, and the vibe is kind of like from old Westerns, but it is a world. It's a total fantasy world. It's not like a historical alternate history book. It is, all the places are fictional, and it's in a fictional world, and the history of this world is different than our, you know, Earth's history. So
okay. I didn't scroll. I didn't see a page count, but this a graphic novel, or is it a single issue floppy?
So it's one issue. It's 24 pages, but it's the first in an ongoing series. Mm-hmm. We've actually plotted out 10 issues. And based on how well it's going, I am very confident that we'll be able to keep it going and end up getting to those 10 issues. So yeah, this is just the first issue.
All right. I believe I believe the art style looks like a paint brush type of style. So what made you choose that aesthetic versus you know, any other one?
Well, this artist, her name is Kay Woolheiser. I worked with her last year on a book called The Knight and the Lion, which is a King Arthur story. And that's just the style that she likes to work in. And I just thought that it would be, you know, that her art would be a really good fit for this kind of story. It's a Western. It's a little grittier. I didn't want art that was too clean, because I didn't think that would fit with like the Western aesthetic. So it's got like a real kind of like a little bit of grit to it, and it's got a little bit of that like fantasy vibe to it. So I didn't think a more traditional comic book style would really be the right fit for this story.
Okay. Once I found, you know, what an editor really does and whatnot, I've been pretty big on editors and asking creators about, do they hire editors or are they an editor itself, whatnot. And since you're a family of writers, and I noticed that you didn't have an editor as well, did you edit your own book or?
So That's a great question. So first of all, it's a collaboration between my wife and I, and so we kind of edit each other. But then also, I have a friend. Um, his name is Brian Douglas. I send him all my stuff, and he uh, really kind of tears it apart. So he's like, I wouldn't say like an editor on like a copywriting level, but on a conceptual level. Um, that he's just like really merciless about it, and that really helps um, fine tune the stories. And then also my letterer Dave Lentz also acts as an editor. So basically, I've got kind of like three different people who are kind of serving that role. I don't have a strict editor that I credit as the editor, um, but Dave Lentz, who's the letterer, really does end up tweaking things and offering suggestions um, during the lettering process, which is always really helpful. People talk about editors a lot, and I do think editors are valuable. Um, I think you got to find the right people. And I think editing can mean a lot of things. Like I said, there's like a conceptual level of like, can you work with someone to help refine your story idea versus someone who is like going through your manuscript and checking for spelling errors and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Just in my work, I done. So my first book, I definitely didn't have an editor. I just had some proofreaders. Say, hey, read this over, make sure everything's good. If you read it, I guess you can tell I didn't have an editor. Second one, I hired an editor. But I would say the editor worked more like a proofreader, a professional proofreader.
mm-hmm.
I used them again for the third book, but for my fourth book, I didn't use them, and I used another editor, and that's when I realized what they really do. Because yes, he checked my word use and all that other stuff, grammar and stuff like that, but he checked other things. Like one of my characters said he would kill another character in my book, but later on in the book, he gave mercy to that character. I said, but before you said the character said he's gonna kill him, but back here he said he spared him. So like you missing that. And I was like, oh man, I never would have caught that.
Yeah.
So I was like, dang, so you worth your money basically. But what he said really, his job would have been, if I'm doing the full volume like I'm doing, I would have him for all 5 of the issues, so he can make everything fall in line through the 5 issues. I was like, oh yeah, that'd been great. Even he said like, you should have gave me your book up front when it's in script form. So he said some of my panel work, is good or whatever. But he said the panel work, it could have been better because we could use a different scene or a different angle compared, with the script beforehand. I was like, man, I didn't know that. So like, I actually learned a lot from him, and now I'm gonna keep paying him because, I don't know, was it like what I don't ask for, they don't tell me type of thing was going on with the ones beforehand, or they just the ones beforehand just didn't know. But like this one, like he's really hands on and like really making a project better, and I appreciate that more.
Yeah.
But with that being said, do you see the use of an editor completely different from like the other writings? I guess you see various writings from your family, whatnot. Hence your wife being a novelist and stuff like that. Because I guess she had used an editor to go through all the pages of her book. So, do you feel like the use of it is quite different in the different areas of writing?
Yeah, totally. I mean, um, I worked in journalism for a little while. An editor there is more like factual accuracy. I mean, there's like copy editing, checking for spelling errors, but there's also like, are you getting the facts right? And then you know, you get editors in fiction who are like you said, helping make sure that almost like a continuity supervisor in a film,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that things are staying um, like true to the characters and true to the narrative, and everything makes sense. Um, and you know, with comics, there's also, you know, a certain amount of like how comprehensible is your book, are the pages, like can the reader read along and understand what's happening, because as writers we're often blinded to that. If we look at a comic book page that we wrote, it makes perfect sense to us, but we're also holding all this knowledge because we came
Mm-hmm.
up with the story. We're holding all the knowledge about it in our heads, and we don't necessarily know what is easy to understand or not understand for the reader. And that's where having someone come in who, you know, is professional to be able to say like, um, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. Because you know, you can have proofreaders who are just like friends of yours, or whatever, and if they're not really putting on their editor hat or their critical hat, then you know, they're gonna be like, yeah, it's great, you're doing great,
Yeah.
you know, I love you
Yeah.
and I love your work, and that's great to hear, but it's not super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my friends, he was a literature teacher. So I let him read my work, and he was like, "Yeah, good. Just had 3 years. Good, man. You did that." I was like, "But I mean, I wanted you to edit my paper, like not
Yeah, yeah.
not to tell me it's good." But uh, I kind of stopped doing it. But I still give him like my books to read, and he's saying that my writing has improved a lot. And I was like, "Okay, now you put your thinking cap on. You saying that?" But going to your journalist work. Um, is it an editor who normally like put a spin on the article, or is it like you? Like, let's say, uh, how do you like piece together somebody's words to make the caption of the article, but really the person didn't really say that, but you want to grab them to read the article. Like, who normally does that part? Is that the editor or the writer?
I mean, in a newspaper, normally the writer doesn't write the headline. Normally that's gonna be like the section editor. There's like many different types of editors at a
Mm-hmm.
newspaper, so that's usually going to be like the section editor, or possibly the managing editor. And then you've got a copy editor who is really just going through and making sure that there are no errors, there's no spelling errors, and there's no grammar errors, and that like everything looks good on the page. Um, and so you got different people having different roles. But of course, the thing about a newspaper is that everything has to be done every day. If it's a daily newspaper, you're like, okay, the news is coming in, you write the story, you put it in the paper. And so you have a lot of different people doing all that stuff. Whereas if you're writing a book or a comic or whatever, you can have fewer people in that process because it doesn't have to be done so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and so I would say I have a lot of different people involved in looking at my comics to make sure that they turn out good, but the pressure is not on as much. Um, that was always what my dad always liked about working at the newspaper, is that every day you start with a completely blank slate and you have to build everything, like this whole newspaper from the ground up in one day and put it out, and then it's done, and you go home and it's done. Um, and then the next day you start over. You're like creating a whole thing from scratch every day, which is huge. That's wild to think
Yeah.
about the coordination that requires. And so I do a lot of work with what I do now, but it's not that there's not that much pressure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get out these books out as fast as I can, but the timeline is more like, can I get an issue out in like 3 months, not one day, you know? So yeah.
Okay. One last question for you in this segment. Um, I know you said you was doing a lot of work before. Well, hey, you had to. You've been doing comics for a little while now. Do you feel like do you see an influx of more people using Kickstarter now than before?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would say Kickstarter is always changing, but one thing that you see is you start to see like celebrities and companies using Kickstarter. And people debate about whether or not that's a good thing. Like Brandon Sanderson, who's like, the one of the world's most famous fantasy authors, did a Kickstarter, and he made the most money that any Kickstarter's ever made. It was like $42 million or something like that. And he brought a lot of people to Kickstarter. A lot of those people would not have ever made a Kickstarter account except to come in and support his project because they wanted the sort of special stuff that he was offering. And then like Keanu Reeves did a comic book, and that made a lot of money, and it brought new people in. And so I would say Kickstarter is definitely growing. I would say that there's more people on the platform all the time. I think just the important thing is that you have to, if you're a creator on Kickstarter, you have to really be always adapting and be paying attention to how the platform is changing and how people are using it. Because if you try to just do the same thing you've always done, you're not gonna grow with that audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like the director or whoever's over the comic book side of Kickstarter changed recently.
Yes. So, yes, changed twice in the last year. They which is, I'm not really sure how that's affecting things. I know that they currently have an interim head of the comic section, who is just the person who is sort of in charge of the whole publishing department of Kickstarter, is kind of filling in right now, but then they're trying to hire someone new. And so because the last guy that they had went to go work for Distillery, which is like a new upstart comic book publishing company. And I don't know, that's really all I know. I don't know any more of the inside talk about it, but it did affect me a little bit because I like had kind of a rapport with the previous person where they would kind of help me out a little bit. And now, like in terms of, like looking at the project and getting it approved and all that kind of stuff. And so, that's changed a little bit. So, and Kickstarter has been changing a lot lately because for a long time, it was like Kickstarter was kind of known as the platform that didn't ever change. I mean, it was like sort of always the same, and it took them a long time to implement new changes. And that's when people started like creating other platforms for crowdfunding. And so then Kickstarter started changing a lot more. So it seems like every month there's something new, some new feature, some new thing that they're doing.
Yeah, last month or this month, I'm not sure, but it's the first time I got an email about comics. Like, I ain't open it, but I'm pretty sure it was almost like a comics newsletter about the comics that's going on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah,
I was surprised at that. I think I've been on Kickstarter since 2017 or 18. I never got an email like that. I get like other stuff like for like a bicycle or some weird other Kickstarter that I never backed ever, But I never got one for comics in general. Maybe one comic, but not a whole email about several comics, they promoting. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool that Kickstarter's working hard to promote projects on Kickstarter.
Yeah,
which is
I assume there was projects they love. I guess there's a batch of them they probably promoted, or if not, even better, But I seen that innovation because Indiegogo definitely emails me twice a day about any and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, like know about all kind of stuff on Indiegogo, which is I haven't backed the project Indiegogo in years, but I'm still getting all these trash emails. But
Yeah.
yeah. But that's all I think I got.
Okay.
To my last segment, it's called Digging in the Crates. Another double meaning term. You back in the day, you were digging the crates, for the old, bluegrass vinyls and CDs and whatnot, as well as old comics and whatnot. Did you say the comics that you read?
Yeah. We talked about X-Men, Spider-Man, and Why the Last Man.
Oh no, I know you said the X-Men and Spider-Man TV shows, but you said any comic book.
Oh
besides
yeah,
the
when I was a kid, I always read those. Well, I didn't. I mean, it's like you have whatever issues you happen to have. You go to the
yeah,
mall
yeah.
and you get that little package of like 5 random comics or whatever. Just like they put
Hmm.
the trash comics in there, and then and so I had like a random issue of like X-Men that I read a million times. And that's
Oh,
cool.
okay, okay,
And then when I got a
okay.
little older, when I like in college and a little bit after that, when I first started to have a little bit of money, like whatever the job you're working, I bought a lot of X-Men and Spider-Man comics. Those were kind of the ones that I would always get at
Yeah.
the comic shop.
I'm assuming you're not much older than I am, but did like the New 52 era? That's when you came back to comics.
Yeah, so around the time that I started buying a lot of comics, I would say the heaviest I was into getting comics every week was from like 2011 to like 2015 or 16.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right around that. So yeah, New 52 was around that time, and then the big one that I really remember that I really liked on X-Men was Brian Bendis's
Yes.
yeah, which is where like
X the one with the Hope Summers and the
mhm.
baby. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
All that
yeah,
stuff.
so we had there was like Avengers versus X-Men with
Yeah.
Hope and everything, and then that led into Cyclops kind of becoming a terrorist, and then um and there was that whole arc with that, and then they went back in time, like the X-Men went back in time and got their original selves
The
and
younger
pulled
self.
them
Yeah.
into the future, and that
Hmm.
was a really interesting. So yeah, I was reading a bunch of stuff around that time.
We was talking about editors earlier. You got to applaud the editor for that whole going back in time getting X Men thing because they made sure they wrote out Wolverine
Hmm.
during that time. Wolverine wasn't there; he was dead.
Yeah,
So I always thought it was funny because younger Gene would have came, so they could another Gene for him to talk to.
yeah.
But he was written out. I think at the time they had Old Man Logan there or something like that. But yeah,
Hmm.
they didn't have the original Logan. I was like, that's great. They made sure that whole plot hole
Yeah.
was gone. But this is the end of the show. You got several titles. All different genres and whatnot. Um, if you had to pick one to get an adaptation, I assume you might pick your most popular one or whatnot. But which one would you enjoy, watching getting created or made, out of all your books?
I think the Unicorn Vampire Hunter would be really good as a cartoon. Um, yeah, I think that would be um, a great um, make for a great cartoon. I write everything as a comic. I don't write anything with like the hope that it will get made in anything else. But yeah, I think Unicorn Vampire Hunter is the most prime for an adaptation, probably. Um, and yeah, yeah.
Just combing through all this information we had this interview. Did any time you ever thought about doing a sports story? Since your family was so big on it and everybody's writers, you ever thought about doing a sports story?
No, no. I don't. I'll tell you what. If I ever do a sports story, it'll be like sort of like a parody of sports. Like
Yeah.
like it'd be about like a pickleball team or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think I would do a sports story. And I think there's plenty of good ones out there from
Hmm.
people who are more passionate about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not for me.
Okay. Just exiting out. Do you have any advice for people who's trying to write or do a Kickstarter or whatnot?
Yeah, I'll tell you the best advice I ever got was from a guy named Walter Osley, who is a really talented comic book writer and artist, a friend of mine. He co-created a book called Metal Shark Bro. Um, and the best advice he ever gave me was the best way to get better at making comics is to make comics.
Yeah.
Whether you're a writer, an artist, whatever it is, if you want to get better, you got to do the thing. Even if you think you're bad at it, even if you think the stuff you're making is not that good, if you keep making it, you'll get better at it. So,
Yeah.
the time is now. you don't like, if you're thinking, well, I'm gonna wait until it's a better time for me, until I'm ready to write a comic or draw a comic. Stop waiting, just do it.
Yep. Yep. I heard the same thing. That's why I told somebody last convention, like, they was like, oh, got a book. And I was like, just do it. Once you do it, you'll get that first good feedback and you're gonna feel good about it. And you'll keep going and going and going.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. Yep. Well, if people want to follow, if people listen to this after your Kickstarter has ended and whatnot, where can they follow you or purchase some of your books?
If you go to calebquist.com, that's my first name, Caleb, and then the second half of my last name, quist.com. You can buy my books. You can sign up for my newsletter. That's the best place to hear about all my stuff. And I also give people free stuff on my newsletter. So that'd be the best way to follow me. I do have social media accounts, but I don't use them, at least not very often. And so you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter if you want, but it'll be boring. So I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, calebquist.com. That's the best place.
Cool. And thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed it. And I hope people got some good information from this whole interview.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.